I believe she was created in a laboratory for just these times to come and save mankind. She has like 16 different degrees. She speaks fluent Russian. She is a scholar in authoritarian regimes. I mean, really. Sarah, good morning.
Hi.
Thank you for allowing me to nerd out on you and still coming on the show.
No problem.
I'm sure you got a lot. I mean, obviously, you saw it all over Twitter, but a lot of people reacted to this passion and urgency that we feel like is missing in so many other people. Like you just channeled everybody, I think, this weekend. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I mean, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for me as a journalist. It's frustrating for me as a scholar of these kind of regimes. You know, I've seen this play out in other countries, but it's also frustrating for me on a personal level, like as a citizen, as a mother, as someone who lives in this country and has to deal with the repercussions of this. And it kind of blows my mind that more people aren't worried about the pragmatic ramifications of the giant transnational crime spree that our government currently consists of.
Thank you. It's not a presidency. It's a crime spree. And you, by the way, I've been hearing so much about you, your podcast, Gaslit Nation, your book, The View from Flyover Country. But, I mean, it must be, like I say, the fact that you are someone that not only, by the way, can you say in Russian, Donald Trump is a traitor to the United States of America?
I'm not fluent in Russian. I'm fluent or semi-fluent in Uzbek. I learned Russian for reading. Maybe Donald Trump, like Trump is tramp in Russian. But yeah, no.
Yeah. But I mean, okay. So, but this is what I was saying about your takedown this weekend was, I think, in many ways more about the media as well, because we learn every day a new, whether it's the Jeffrey Epstein story, the Manafort story, how they just fell down on the job in 2016. But as you were saying, you started tearing your hair out from the second he was chosen, right?
Of course. I mean, none of this information about Paul Manafort was, not in the public domain. He was known as a dictator lackey. He was known as an oligarch lackey. He was not committing these kind of crimes in secret. The problem was what these crimes are classified as, and they were basically sold as lobbying. It was, people thought, okay, this is just a typical D.C. kind of thing. This is a long-time GOP operative, notorious for his sleazy little lobbying firm that he ran with Roger Stone starting in the 1980s that has now, branched out internationally, which they had begun doing in the 80s and then had moved into Ukraine. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, and especially starting a bit, around 2000 and after that. And, the thing is, at the time, I had written an article already saying, first Trump was probably going to win the primary. He was probably going to win the general. This is in February of 2016. And if he won, he was going to rule in a way that's extremely similar to the Central Asian autocrats that I'd studied, basically as a kleptocrat. That article is still online. It's in the Diplomat. It's called Trump Minbashi. But then when Manafort entered the picture, I was like, wow, this metaphor just got extremely literal because, the one thing I was not aware of was how deep, Trump's own ties to, the Russian mafia when his longtime connection to Russia, but with Manafort entering the picture, that became something to look into. And by the time that Trump did the press conference where he asked Russia to get him Hillary Clinton's emails and said that the media would reward them, that's when I was like, come on, you clearly have to take this seriously now. But unfortunately, people didn't, and, very little was done.
Someone pointed out online, I believe it was yesterday, that I'm not nearly as bright as Rachel Maddow, which I think it goes without saying. But I feel like I've been screaming for the longest time, but God bless people like you and Malcolm Nance that have had your hair on fire for 3 years from before the election. I keep saying, I feel like we're in the biggest, dumbest movie plot ever. We're just screaming at everybody else in the theater going, are you kidding me? How much more obvious can this be, right? I mean, I wanted to get your take on the sentencing memo. So obviously, Mullers shows no mercy. The sentencing memo states his criminal actions were bold. They went to the heart of the criminal justice system. No warranted or mitigating factors. He lists the many people and entities that Manafort lied to: tax preparers, bookkeepers, banks, the Treasury Department, the Department of Justice, National Security Division, the FBI, the Special Counsel's Office, the Grand Jury, his own legal counsel, member of Congress, and members of the executive branch. I mean, he obviously is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. What is your take on this whole, whether he's going to get a pardon? Because clearly Trump has dangled that, right?
Yeah, I am worried to some degree that he's going to get a pardon. I'm also worried that he's not going to be sentenced according to the kind of, in line with the kind of severity of the crimes that he's committed. I mean, for all the crimes laid out in that memo, he can get a maximum of 10 years. Originally, before he did his fake cooperation with the Mueller probe, which I still can't believe they fell for, he was slated to potentially get 305 years. Now we're like, people are thinking, 19 to 24. Either way, if he does get that, he will die in prison. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's sentenced very minimally. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump pardons him after. Trump has been dangling those pardons like a lure. That's why he was, pardoning people like Scooter Libby or Joe Arpaio. It was to send a signal of like, hey, you can go and try your luck with the jury, as Manafort did, and it did not work out. Or you can, stay the path, keep loyal, keep your mouth shut, and, I'll let you out. And what Manafort did was even sneakier, which was, you saw how lightly Papadopoulos was treated by the Mueller probe, that he did not cooperate, yet went on to serve only 2 weeks. And so he basically did a fake cooperation that was intent on impeding the Mueller probe. It succeeded, and his jail time is still reduced. In terms of justice, this makes no sense. In terms of public safety and national security, it is an absolute disaster.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the only thing I look is that obviously so much redacted that they're saying it suggests Mueller still has open investigations relating to Manafort and others, of course. SDNY obviously talking about already preparing another, because he can't pardon him for state crimes, right? So, but you're right. I feel like and you said it so eloquently this weekend, and just you do all the time. Just what you just said. This is a threat to national security. It's hard to underestimate his crimes and how big this is, right?
Oh, yeah, and it's not just Manafort. I mean, there are so many people in Trump's fold that have either been indicted or should be indicted. People like Ivanka and Jared, who are in the White House for no reason other than their nepotistic ties to the president. They have access to classified intelligence, and they've either been making kleptocratic deals or working in collaboration with some of the most brutal regimes in the world. You could look at the Jamal Khashoggi murder, in which, Jared allegedly gave information to MBS for a target list. That's the kind of thing that they're doing. And then, beyond that, you look at WikiLeaks, you look at this, the trading of classified information and state secrets. That was bad before Trump came into office. Now we have an actual Russian asset aided by a transnational crime syndicate with access to the highest level of state secrets, of power, of military force, in the world. So, we're in a lot of trouble. And the more time this goes on, the less, aggressive that, Mueller in Congress and anyone with, leverage and power is being, the worse the repercussions are. They're going to live on long after the Trump administration is gone, if in fact it ever ends.
Oh, God. This is how much I love America, Sarah. My crew can tell you I'm very high strung, and I knew that you were not going to calm me down. I knew you were only going to whip me up.
But it's what's necessary.
But it is exactly what's necessary. I mean, that's what I can't even, I'm like you, I can't stand even the punditry and the normalization of any of this. I mean, we all should be hair on fire every day. What do you think? I mean, were you at all, I don't know, not calmed, but whatever, by what Rosenstein said? I mean,
I'm never calmed by what that guy says. I mean, he's been talking out of both sides of his mouth for the entire time he's been in office. I'm not exactly sure where his loyalties lie, and the fact that I have to ask, is it with the Trump administration or with the United States? I mean, that's not a question that we've had to ask before in America, is, which country do our officials' greatest loyalties lie with? And so I don't quite trust him. I'm certainly not assured by anything. What I look at more is actions versus rhetoric, because, we have all this, these lies, these sort of tough talk lies coming out of the administration, that they're being tough on Russia, that they're, fortifying national security, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then they commit blatant, acts of thievery or alliances, with hostile states right in front of our eyes. And they want us to see that discrepancy. That's traditionally how autocrats flaunt power, and Trump is no different.
Yeah. Well, I always have Malcolm Nance on, and then he ultimately scares the bejesus out of me and then calms me down. I mean, I think his general thesis is that this is too big for them to get away with it. I'm not sure you feel the same way, or do you?
No, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by get away with it. It's too big for them to get away with it in the sense that no one's going to find out. But we all have known. We've known a lot of this information since before the election. The question is, who is going to bring accountability? Who is going to bring justice? Who is actually going to stop, this train wreck before it gets even worse? Because the repercussions are global. We see the UK struggling with a lot of the same issues that we are. This is a broad attack on democracy that was launched at a time of incredible global instability, and it's the result in many ways of a kind of white-collar organized crime nexus that has been building, for about 30 or 40 years. It's been there my entire life, and now it's come to fruition. I don't know exactly how you stop it, but I know, the one way you can guarantee it continues is if you keep pretending that it doesn't exist. If people keep pretending that everything's fine, that Mullers got it, that eventually, this kind of audacious, brazen criminality will certainly be stopped by someone like, I don't think we have saviors here. We just have, the law, and we have the power of our voices. So, I do encourage people to continue to speak out about it.
Yeah.
No one is above the law, and they need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, you tweeted a great thing. Contact your representative, say you want hearings, not because impeachment will happen, but because it will get information out there. They need to OJ trial out of these hearings, make them ubiquitous and accessible to all.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And Jill Wine-Banks says the same thing about, what happened in Watergate. Sarah, I mean, I think, I hate to say it, but the brilliance and evil of Putin's plan was I'm not sure the founders saw it coming about co-opting another entire party, not just a president, so that they've been running, they're complicit and they're running interference for him and acting as his defense attorneys rather than as Americans, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And, that was something, even I or Malcolm or others, who did identify Russian interference in Trump's own personal circle of corruption much earlier. We did not realize how complicit the GOP was, how shameless they would be, how compromised some of them are. And, I basically see this as a combination of, a person can be opportunistic, they can be corrupt, and they can also be threatened and blackmailed at the same time. And so I think a lot of the old tactics that not only, the Russian government uses, but that Trump and his circle, going all the way back to his days with Roy Cohn, have used to keep people in line, are being used on the GOP. And then, of course, you have open collaborators, people like Mitch McConnell, who were, enthusiastic about the prospect of a government that was, serving another country to enrich the profits and the extremist ideologies of a few, to create a tyranny of a minority. They want a one-party state. They do not want a democracy. And I do think that few people saw that coming, and they thought, okay, if people have that view, others will rise up. Others will counter them. There's a way to stop this. And, like I say, the longer this drags on, the more people kind of get used to this situation.
Exactly.
They have to accept it. And that itself is a stumbling block. That's why I want hearings, because it forces people to reintroduce this evidence and kind of look at it in a new light, look at it with clear eyes.
Sarah, I could keep you forever, but then law enforcement would get involved. And But can I just ask you real quick? There was a tweet, well, let's see, I don't know if you were retweeting, but on 8 separate occasions from his first press conference as president to just yesterday, Trump has specifically denied making any quote-unquote phone calls to Russia as part of the 2016 collusion effort. The thing is, no one's ever accused him of that. What do you think that's about?
I mean, I think it's probably likely that they've spoken. I found in 2016, I found an interview that Trump had done on Fox News in February 2014 where he bragged about meeting Putin. He said specifically that Putin contacted him and they had this great talk, and, he had promised Trump a win for the future. He didn't identify what it was, but he said it was something that was going to make him happy and, make America better. It was an extremely strange interview, and the only reason I found it is because I was reading Russian language state materials, and at that time, back in 2014, the Russian media, was propping up Trump. They were writing all these articles about, how he's going to be a savior for Russia, and I thought, well, that's really weird, because at that time he was like the host of Celebrity Apprentice. Like, why in the world was the Russian media so fascinated? But if you dig deep, you can find those kind of ties, and I think it's very likely that Trump has been lying about his relationship with Putin. Ivanka went to the Kremlin in 2006 and literally sat in Putin's chair. She was brought there by Felix Sater, one of Trump's business associates, and also a mobster and FBI informant. It's like This has all been out there. If you just go through like Google Archives, you can find this information. So
Sarah,
it blows my mind that the FBI didn't. It's like, get them a library card or.
Sarah, you are terrifying and wonderful at the same time. It is required listening. Gaslit Nation is the podcast. The book is The View from Flyover Country. I hope you will please come back. You're just doing such tremendous, important work. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right, thank you.